everyone. Welcome to Ask Julie Anything this evening. Tonight we are joined with Julie, founder and formulator at Adored Beast, as you know. And we've got a special guest here today, Amanda Ree of Sama Dog. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, friends.
So happy to have you here. If anyone's not familiar with Sama Dog, Amanda's the founder, and she helps humans and their dogs with things like connectedness. She has a holistic approach and also a spiritual aspect. Amanda, you were taught and studied with Deepak Chopra. Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. Very excited to be here and learn from you. Maybe you could start the session off by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey, what helped you choose this path, and how did you get here?
Well, thank you, both of you and all of our audience members. It's wonderful to be here and just to be able to share in this conversation, any conversation that's heart-centered, soul-centered, and so, useful, valuable for our fur friends right in our homes means so much to me. And I know it does to you too. So to be able to share in this community is wonderful today. And so, yes, my journey began, as we were talking a little bit ago, by a dog literally saving my life. When I was about 3 years old, I had this best friend that was our family dog. He came into our family right at the time that I was born. I don't know what my parents were thinking, getting a puppy and a baby at the same time, but they did. And so I'm 3 years old. I'm swimming around in the backyard. Well, my mom actually didn't know that I had gotten out from the house. She'd gotten some new locks on the door. At the moment, she was on the phone. At that time, you're plugged into the wall, and she hears something and eventually goes out there and finds me on the side of the pool soaking wet. And the prints are Sheltie there too. And I'm coughing up water, and I don't know that I would be here today without that beautiful angel saving my life. So I had already known and felt so deeply connected in friendship with canines, yet I remember this just being like true love, like a deep, deep soul love and a bond that would last throughout many lifetimes, I'm sure, and I hope. So life carries on. At about 10 years old, my family moved to Lake Tahoe, and I convinced my parents to buy a pet store at that time. So we were the only pet store, Pet and Company, in the middle of this wonderful old town, old school Lake Tahoe, South Lake Tahoe. And so I grew up there working at the pet store, in between going to school and all summer and all of those wonderful things. Worked with our vet over the summers when I would have some time away, and just learned so much about animals and deep into my passion. Then off I go to college, and life happens, and eventually stumble through difficult times to the practice of yoga and meditation. And at that time, I had not heard of Ayurveda, the other leg of the stool, as they call it in this Vedic knowledge. But yoga, most of us had heard of. And so this is about 20 years ago. I ended up kind of finding my way into a yoga class and finding my way into my heart, essentially finding my way into a very deep connection that I had not felt with any sort of practice before. I went there to get really strong arms like Madonna. That was my initial inclination. But then I ended up really finding myself, as kind of silly as that might sound. It really was true, and it transpired in that way. And so I just continued to study this work. I ended up moving eventually from the East Coast to the West Coast, dove even more deeply into the world of yoga, and did a formal teacher training. So I studied through the Shivananda organization at that time. It's one of the great lineages of yoga, and it has come to the East. And then about 15 years ago, I found my way synchronistically into working with Dr. Deepak Chopra, who had until just recently a center here, the Chopra Center for Wellbeing in San Diego, where I live. And I started out running the events there, and ended up with, over all those years, having all kinds of different roles, becoming certified in all of their teacher trainings, being one of the lead educators and hosts, becoming the vice president of client services for many years, and just finding so much depth in this service to the world and in this career path. And then it was probably about 7 years ago now that we were able to buy this home that I'm in right now. And with that, from going from a renter to a homeowner, you could then officially have a little more reign over your animals in your life, right? Over your animal companions, because now you didn't have to be held back by those restrictions. So once that was allowed, then I was like, okay, now I'd love to bring more animals around. And I also would love to foster. So that's really where this union started to come together. Yoga is defined as union. So this was a true yoga of the world of Vedic wisdom and all of these spiritual teachings and holistic health into this world of this deep, passionate world of dogs and this connection that I had. Because I started to see in these foster dogs that would come straight out of the shelters and into our home, they would have an array, as I'm sure many of you have worked with foster dogs before, they would have an array of health challenges, behavioral challenges, just, you know, background of difficult times. And so you would rehabilitate them in every way that you could. And so it was with them that I started to discover brand new tools that applied. I recognized the reflection of the imbalances that I had learned to teach to humans. And then I started to apply these Ayurvedic tools as I knew them for humans. And it worked remarkably. It was profound the way that because they're animals and because the science that I study and I teach is Ayurveda, that's the study of life or the study of nature. Well, clearly, because they're animals, it just so easily was taken in by them. They wanted to balance. They didn't have that mental kind of boundary between their own wellness and what our suggestions were on the outside. So I really started to see some growth and some huge healing in these animals. And that's what really got me started on, I want to be able to share this with the world. You know, I want to be able to put together some information for others to be able to recognize how these teachings can help animals, these Vedic teachings, but also what is a big part of it is our own influence into their lives. And that's what Ayurveda is essentially about, is our environment and the way that we exchange. We are in exchange with everything around us. So with our fur friends in our lives, there's a lot of exchange going on, and we can learn so much about ourselves, and we can both heal. So that really inspired me, and ever since then, I can't stop talking about it, as you can see.
That's amazing. I think I've always felt ever since I was a kid that you know, we're so connected with our animals. I was a lot younger than my brother and my sister, and we moved to a farm, and all my friends were far away, and I was always really, really, really close with animals, and my mom rescued animals my entire life. So, but when I started my clinic, what I remember this, I guess I was probably in it for maybe 3 years. And I said to a really, like, she's one of my best friends, and she's a human and an animal homeopath. And I said, you know, I feel like animals are in our, like, we want to heal them so badly, right? Like, it's like I'll sit across from a client, and they'll have their dogs there, and they'll be eating McDonald's, but they will come and see me, right? They would come and see me, like they would do anything to help their animals. And it wasn't very long before I was like, okay, these people are here because their animals are actually bringing them here. Because I had such a wide variety in BC. BC is like Canada's California.
Yeah.
And so we had like, you know, I would send people to homeopaths and osteopaths and meditation centers and Buddhist colonies, and like I had such a strong connection of being able to help people find guidance, like families find guidance and stuff. And then it's like, okay, this is actually the opposite what's happening. Yes, we're helping them. We are definitely finding this this path of healing for their animals. But I think the bigger reason they're here is because their animals are bringing them here to be healed. Because the amount of people were like, wow, that's so interesting. Like, now my dog doesn't have hypothyroid. Like my wife suffers from hypothyroid, or my husband suffers. Would it work? And would it do this? Like, just lights start to go off. And then you think, it's not. And being a homeopath, if something wasn't right, I would always try and get the whole family to come in. So it wasn't just like a one person coming in. And you would find, the dog got sick or the cat got sick right at the same time they started struggling with a teenager with drug addiction, or something terrible happening or whatever. And the father wouldn't go for counseling, but he would come and talk to me in order for the dog to get better. Right. So then it would be like this. Yeah, it's really, so when I read your website, I'm always so, the minute I feel or see where people are trying to bridge that connection of ourselves and our animals becoming stronger, healthier, more aware, more mindful, more connected to the world around us, I just get goosebumps, because I truly in my heart feel like they're here to heal us, So what, I'm not super familiar with that modality. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure.
Like
about Ayurveda?
Yes, please.
Yeah. And Julie, I have a question for you. When you would recommend, and still when you recommend things to people, to families, with their animals coming to you, do you ever recommend the humans take the remedy as well?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes
I'll do that too. And
yeah,
it can help so much. A lot of times they literally will need that supplement or whatever it is, but sometimes just like to synergize the family. I was wondering if you
did
notice that.
Because I'm a human homeopath as well, I really didn't like doing people. I still don't. It's not my affinity, but what will happen a lot of times is, the cool thing about homeopathy is we were talking about Ignatia and Nat Muir. So you'll read about a remedy and it's like, oh, this is this dog's remedy, or this is this horse's remedy. And then when you look at the bottom, it'll have relationship remedies, right? So it's like, what remedies are similar to it, or what remedies are whatever. So, if the dog was over grooming, or the cat's literally, self-mutilating, and you're like, oh my gosh, this animal needs Ignatia. But the person or the family member that's with the cat a lot, or the dog a lot, is much more reserved, much more standoffish, much more doesn't want to talk about their feelings, doesn't want to be consoled. It's like, okay, they're sister remedies, right?
Yeah, it's like the other side of the coin.
Exactly. It's like they're like kind of like the polar opposite, but they're so similar. And when you do that, or I would send them to human homeopaths and say, can I discuss your cat's or your dog's or your horse's case with the homeopath, like the human homeopath? And we did that a lot, where people would be like, we'll do anything for our animals to get better. And I would talk to them about what I thought was going on with the animal. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's great. It can be so healing, and really that again guides us right into the essence of Ayurveda. So for anyone on the line that has never even heard of this concept before, I'll just define it for you. Is that's kind of how you say it, Ayurveda. And the easiest way to position it in the world is it's the third leg of the stool to yoga and meditation. So the Vedic studies are what they kind of call this body of knowledge. It's all rooted in India, ancient India. Ayurveda is the healing system, where yoga is more the philosophy and clearly like the movements and postures. And then meditation is the spiritual practice, you could say. The Ayurveda is the physical side of things. And so how do we heal our body and mind? The body-mind connection is what it's all about. So certainly never seeing an illness or an ailment as a standalone, but really seeing it as part of the system. So that is what Ayurveda is. It's a holistic healing system from India. It literally translates, it translates from Ayurveda to the science of life, or the science of knowledge. And I like to call it the science of nature as well. So it really fundamentally guides us to recognize that we are in constant exchange with our environment. We are all made of the same building blocks. We're all made of the same stuff, the same ingredients. Absolutely. We're all just a unique blend. And what's so cool about it, and why I love Ayurveda so much, is once we come to recognize our unique blend at that time, or our dog's unique blend called their dosha, that's your mind-body type. Some of our audience members might be familiar with this world. So there are 3 doshas. So once you know your dog's body, mind type, or their dosha, you can then select all kinds of things that will help bring them more into balance, or regain balance and sustain balance. And so when I say all kinds of things, it's certainly things that they eat or drink or supplement, but also behavior and the way we talk to them, our methodology for training them, our communication style with them. But even also down to the way that we plan their daily routine. We can work with the seasons. We work with the senses. So working with aroma and sight and sound, all recognizing that we are consuming information that influences us through our mouth, which we're all aware of, but also through those other gateways. So that's what Ayurveda is all about, is this exchange with everything around you. And so when we're able to know what our dog needs in their elemental makeup, what is it that they have most predominant in their makeup? So to make it a little more tangible for people, it's either airiness, fieriness, or earthiness. So when we recognize which one they are, we can make changes, we can make choices that bring them back into balance, which, by the way, is what Sama means, the name of my organization. It's like your essential equanimity, harmony, homeostasis. So once we get our animal into that space, which is how most of our holistic sciences work, when we get them into Sama, the body can heal itself and the mind can heal itself. The body and being, the whole energy is resilient enough to stand strong, to fight off invaders, to process through that emotional upset of the 4th of July and the fireworks that can traumatize an animal for weeks, months, years. But a healthy animal in Sama can actually digest that experience much easier and move on with life in a happy way. So that's the goal of Ayurveda, is to bring the animals into that space. And then all the courseware that I teach is basically how to do that.
It's so fascinating for me too, because everything's so similar, like the pockets of medicine, right? Like ancient medicines and historical medicines from every part of the world and all the different countries, they have such similarities. They have like that with homeopathy, with like Qi and traditional Chinese medicine. And it's all about, like with homeopathy, it's about bringing the vital force back into its balance, right? Which is like homeostasis, like you said, so that when there's traumas, the body just is able to, we often would say, it would be like if it's a river and a tree falls in your river, if you don't get the tree out of the river and rebalance it, it's not the tree that's causing the real problem. Well, there's a tree in the river that's causing a problem, but it's where the water goes around the tree and erodes the bank, right? So it can go over unless it really hits it, and then you're dead. But so it blocks the river, right? But it's about helping to pull that tree out and regain that balance. So it's all so similar. And the first time I ever had Ayurveda medicine, anything done with me, is when I went to India. And I went to India for school and trained with Rajan Sankaran. And
I saw that on your site.
yeah, and we were able to work with some of the traditional medicine there, just like a little tiny bit. He really wanted us to see it and experience it and stuff. It was incredible. It was just, but I think, isn't it? So I think don't you think it's so interesting? Like similar, when you talk to me about, we're all made of the same stuff. Doesn't matter where we live, where we originated, where our ancestors are, the energies were the same. So it's just so cool that every place, they're unique, but the underlying thing about the body's ability to heal itself, right, is all very similar.
Yeah.
And
that's a true integrative, the truly integrative approach is, where you can really bring in all of the different spokes. That's why I use the symbol of the wheel all the time, and like all the different spokes. So they can be different traditions, they can be different tools and resources or actual like methodologies. But in the middle of that is that space of sama, equanimity, whatever we want to call it. And so and the great news is, and I think most holistic practitioners get excited about this, as soon as we go into that natural world, it combines beautifully. They complement each other. They won't contraindicate one another. They typically won't make an animal or a human unwell. Now, of course, that's a generalization, so we have to be careful with that. But generally speaking, it doesn't work like that. And then, you get into the Western model, and you have to be extremely careful with what's given and what the body is experiencing at the same time. Where in this natural model, it's like nature knows how to work with itself.
It does.
And that's why I found that animals just absorbed the holistic approach so readily, bringing in that spiritual, energetic side too. It's like that was another gateway, another channel for them. Just as much as we taste, as I mentioned, and see and hear things, we are also receiving information energetically, and animals are, I could say, even a little more aware of that than we humans are. And so to them, just as much as a certain food that doesn't sit well with you, a certain energy doesn't sit well with them either. And so really tuning into what can we do to help create a better environment for that animal and help them to find that balanced place again, and sometimes, like you had given the example of stress going on in the home, a traumatic event happening with the family, the animal then becoming ill, or, the allergies really coming up at times like that. And there are things that we can do about it. We sometimes feel defenseless, but there's so many things that we can do.
Yeah. And I think when you said, like, with the spiritual part, maybe even more so, I've always thought that. I've always said, their animals are just so much more evolved than we are. And just the way they cope. Well, you'll hear someone and they'll say, oh, it doesn't bother them. And I always thought, yeah, it bothers them. They just know how to cope better with it than we do.
Yeah.
They're able to stay present. They're able to breathe it off, shake it off. They just have way more tools than we have, right? They haven't lost their tools, where we've lost our tools because we've been told those tools don't work, right? So we've lost them through our generations and stuff of not using them, right? Like meditation and stuff is an old tool, right? Like it's something that everyone on many levels, and we've just lost that. And or you'll see cows, and like I have a very hard time when I drive by farms. My animals are super spoiled. like it's really hot here right now, and my horses are free and my cows are free to go wherever they want. Like, they have massive fields and stuff, but their barns, when they come back in, have these huge fans, right? So if it's really buggy or it's super hot, they can go into the barn and it's nice and cool, and they can stand in front of their fans and drink their water and do whatever. And it's like, when it's hot and it's buggy, because it's Nova Scotia, we have flies and deer flies and mosquitoes and things like that. That's where they are, right? So they have their own choice. They're animals. But where do they go? They go to where it's cool and breezy until it's a night out, and then they go back out and they graze outside and they go under the trees and stuff at night. But I'll go by animals that have no shade, and it's like, 900 degrees out, and you're looking at them, and I'm like, oh, I can't even drive past this farm. It just makes my heart hurt. And then I'll slow down and I'll look at them, and I can tell that they're stressed. But you'll say something to somebody like, well, they're just cows. They're used, like, cows don't, they're just cows. They don't understand that, or they don't feel that, or whatever. It's like, no. You go by and you know that they do, but you also understand that they have ways of either detaching from it or not getting too freaked out by it, or staying in the present moment with it. It's really quite fascinating. But when you said how, their spiritual side, I think they're far more spiritual than we give them credit for.
I agree. And I think it just brings to my mind right now that I think most of us experience that maybe a little more when our animals at the end of their life. And we are now, for one, concerned because we know we're not going to have that physical form much longer. So we start to, as much as we worry, what I always coach people to do is, as much as you can, not worry right now. I know it's very concerning. It's difficult. It's painful to watch your animal at the end. But if you choose to have them here right now and they choose to be here, then here we are. And the more present that you can be with them, the more in celebration that you can be with them, the more just like accepting and out of your head and into your heart that you can be with them in those final days or weeks, the better, because you are going to bond, if you can call it that. Let's say plug in even more deeply with their soul. And then you are going to eternally have that connection anyway, but now you'll be even a little bit more aware of it. You've spent a little more time in that relationship at that depth. And so what I offer to people, and one of the reasons why I love to share meditation, that's one of the things that we put out every week, a free meditation to the world. It's really like, we go into the studio and we take our time with it and really intentionally write these and create them so that anyone that wants to have a deeper soul-centered moment with their animal on a daily basis has access to doing that. Because sometimes we ourselves, unless we're trained or have some inspiration or teachers that can guide us, we don't know how to do that all the time. So one of my purposes in this world is to help guide people into that connection of soul.
And Stephanie, do you have can you put in the chat, because I know there's a whole bunch of people on Facebook right now watching this too, but can we say how people access that? Can you tell us how?
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, samadog.com/join us. You can they can go straight to the page, you fill it out, and then every Monday you'll get an email from us with the meditation on there.
I will put that in the chat right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, my husband helps me. He does all the audio visual for the Chopra Center for Deepak, and he's still there as a full-time employee. And so we've, worked these events forever together. So he's masterful in the audio visual world. So he does all the post-production, and he came up a few hours ago and was like, oh my gosh, this week's meditation is the best. I love it. It's so beautiful. I hope everyone on the planet listens to this. So, so I'm always happy to be able to have a few more ears and hearts that are willing. And they're specifically made, or the intention behind them is to practice with your dog. So whether they're next to you or whether they're in the other room, you're still with your dog, and you can help them, physically, emotionally, energetically. You help yourself. You help relationship, connection that you have together, working out some of those little kinks in the system. It can all happen in that meditation space.
So awesome. And Dr. Isla Fishburne, do you know who she is?
Very well, yes.
Yeah, and she has a drumming, a 30-minute drumming for your dog, for you and your dog to be with. And I was listening to it on my deck a couple days ago, and I'm not joking. Like my cat, I have a cow. I have two rescue cows, and
great.
she stood in the field, and it was like she was meditating. I've never seen anything like it. She just stood there, and it was like she was just looked for 30 minutes straight at something. She was looking towards the water, but it was, I didn't want to interrupt, because every time I would go to take a picture, it would stop the track, right? But it's just so exciting to hear of everybody like doing this. So thank you. I think it's really great, and I don't want to keep being the one that asks all questions. So,
we could talk all day.
I know, it's just I could float away talking about this stuff, because it's just so important. It's really important. Like I think with COVID and everything that's going on, like the climate that we're in right now, with so much intensity, I just feel like nature is screaming at us to pay attention, to keep learning from it, rather than us trying to put it in a box. Like we really need to look at it and what it's there teaching, what it's teaching us, right? Like what can we learn? And so much of it is, if we just, that's that observation part. We just, we drive by trees constantly, but we don't really pay attention to them, right? We don't really look at them. We don't really listen to them. We don't really watch them, and just even a tree has so much to teach us if we just slow down. And go ahead. No, go.
I was going to say that one of my teachers, so Deepak Chopra, as mentioned, has been a great teacher in my life, and he had for many years a partner named Dr. David Simon. And David passed away about 7 years ago now. However, he was a hugely important force in many of our lives, and he was Mr. Nature. So he would teach and remind us to do this simple practice every day, if you can. And it has stuck with me. Well, two things that David taught stuck with me. I'll share both. The more profound and then the more practical. The more profound is when you're out and around in the environment, the outdoor environment, find some piece of nature. It could be a pine needle. It could be a pine cone. It could be a blade of grass. It could be a flower. It could be a drip of dew at the end of a leaf, anything. And just for a moment, get lost in the glory, in the divinity of that creation for just a moment. So you gaze, like just today I did it. I have a new plant in the backyard that's called a princess flower. And it's starting to bloom these beautiful purple kind of velvety flowers. And now that it's doing better, it's settled into our yard. Now I noticed this morning in the middle of the purple is this bright red center. So I just sat with it this morning and I stared into its mouth basically. And then the bits that come out, I don't know the anatomy of flowers, but the parts that come out here are bright yellow. And then, so there was just such magnificence in this flower, in the intricacy and the beauty, and just to pause on the way to the park. I just paused for a moment, stared into that flower, took a deep breath into that flower, recognized that I'm made of the same stuff as that flower, recognized that the same life force that keeps it alive and that brought that bloom out this morning is the same life force that blooms within me. Just having that moment, and then thank you, just being grateful for that awareness and then move on. That practice in and of itself can have profound impacts on our life, on our physical body, on our health and healing, our immune system, on our mental state, because it literally triggers a biological response to the mental moment of being present.
Yeah.
And there's just those simple moments in life when we break it down slow like that. We can glance at a flower or we can be one with that flower. And when we do that, there's so much beauty, and like you said, there's so much learning that comes through that. And just briefly, the second thing that David taught me is, well, he taught me many things, but on a daily basis, I think about that you should pick up trash as a karmic expression when you find it out in the street. So you will often find me earlier today, even with like a whole food container that someone had just dumped out. So here I am walking down the street with this whole food container with my poop bag wrapped around it so I didn't like scare me. Like, I'm doing, this is a big piece of karma. This is a big chunk of karma. This is going to really wipe away some good stuff. I'm kind of teasing, but that's a way to think of cleaning up the planet.
But it's true. And you know, it can make you, when you do it, you don't really think about it, but it really makes you feel good. Like it makes you, it's like this big thing that you've done. Like it could be the littlest thing, but you feel like, it's almost like when you say release some karma, it's like something falls away. Like you actually feel a little lighter when you do something like that.
Yeah.
I do that a lot with, and it's not litter or garbage, but I can't whenever I can't drive by something that's been run over and just left on the road. Mm-hmm. I'm constantly pulling over and taking it and putting it into the ditch or whatever, because I just can't. I know its soul is gone, but I feel like by leaving it there, it just is it's such a, not disrespectful, but it's well, kind of disrespectful. Like
you're helping it to be honored.
Yeah, you know, because I've seen other animals get hit too, like especially raccoons and stuff. They'll try to pull them off if it's a family member. They'll try to pull them off the road, and then they get hit. You know, it's just being conscious, like, you know, of that was somebody's mom or dad, or that garbage is landing on somebody's, you know, some little animal's front lawn or you know, like or space, its world. So Steph, let's ask some questions.
Yeah, I'd love to. You ladies have got us absolutely floored over here. I know I've been muted, but I've been laughing and I've been like, just wow, you know, behind the scenes here. And I'm sure everyone that's here with us is feeling the same. So far, thank you so much. Excellent session. I think we'll start with Heather. She was on Facebook. Heather asked, she's got a severely anxious and fearful puppy, a puppy mill rescue beagle. And I know Cheryl here with us in the session, she has the same problem with a German Shepherd. Super anxious, fearful. How can we try to connect with animals that are feeling this way, or what things can we do to help calm them? Amanda, do you want to start? And Julie, you can add.
Sure. And, you know, Julie, you are obviously a wealth of knowledge with these things as well. So I'll share and you can add on, and I'm sure it will all work. But I'll just take the perspective or kind of the position of the body-mind approach also, and the relationship with our humans. So I would say that what we just talked about, meditation, is one of the best things that we can do, because we are in that calm space. They are feeding off of our energy more than we realize. So even our concerns, and rightfully so, if your dog is really freaked out and is obviously so unhappy and so ungrounded, it's very difficult to sit there and watch that. But as we get more concerned, that's what we think about, and that's basically the energy, the radio frequency that we are putting out from our mind and from our heart, and that's what they're picking up on. And they're thinking, why is mom so upset? I mean, I was already insecure, and now she's also upset, and now the one place that I had some stability, I'm questioning. So the more that we can be the change, I know it's cliche, but it's true. It's with us humans and it's with the animals too. Be the change you want to see in them. Ask yourself with no blame. And this is not about that at all. It's more inquiry. But when we see even a new animal in our life, because remember, all of them are sent to us for a reason and as a teacher and for some purpose. So this new being comes into your life and they're a nervous wreck. Ask yourself, how am I doing when it comes to nervousness, anxiety, uncertainty, insecurity? How am I doing with that in my life? Just take inventory. And then, hey, no matter where we're at, let's see if I can then bring the energy that my dog needs even more, which is grounding, peace, confidence, stability, consistency. So let me bring that energy forward. And that's the Ayurvedic approach, is whether we're being it ourselves and therefore providing it, or whether the food is grounding, moist and oily. That's typically what I'll recommend for a dog that's ungrounded and uncertain and nervous. Grounding, warm, moist, oily food. So whether it's with our presence or whether it's with what we're providing them in their bowl, the intention is to bring the opposite, right? To create that balance yet again and bring their feet, their 4 paws onto the earth. And even that visual, I've learned from many of my animal communicator friends and practitioners that visual can be very helpful for a fearful dog. A visual of them in their body, in their fursuit, and that fursuit very securely rooted onto the earth. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to put them on the ground, although that is a good practice to do. The earth has some healing properties that are powerful. But I mean, even if it's in your mind, and if it's maybe at the end of your meditation, that's where I typically will tell people or invite people to bring in some of these mindful practices. So you've already been meditating. Maybe you do a Sama Dog 1. It's like 10 minutes. You just breathe and settle in. And then when you're in that space, now imagine them secure, easygoing, relaxed, unaffected by the sounds and the environment or whatever might be triggering their fears. And imagine them in that way, and you will put that picture out there for them to live into. It's like through that image, you tell them where you want them to go. And that can be another very helpful technique for a dog like that. So those are just a few tips. We get into lots more, but.
Awesome. No, very helpful.
I want to know, I'll say some stuff too, but when you say warm, moist, oily, what else did you say? Warm, moist, oily?
Grounding.
Grounding.
Food.
Yes. Can you give people an example of what that is, or is that too much?
No, that's good. It's because really what most anxiousness is from the Ayurvedic perspective and back to the doshas, the body, mind type. What that animal is usually going through with nervousness and anxiety is a vata imbalance. Vata is air and space, so that creates that lightness, like a balloon that'll just drift away, right? Especially if the wind blows too high. So you're looking to tie that balloon down basically, and then nourish it so the whole thing just kind of settles in. So with this type of body-mind situation going on, warm, moist, oily. So one of my favorite foods is to rehydrate. So there's many good dehydrated foods out there. One of my specific brand favorites is the Honest Kitchen, but there are many that are dehydrated foods or freeze-dried foods that you could then rehydrate and reconstitute with warm water. And therefore it'll be nice and nourishing and fresh, but have all that hydration. And then the warm water, I'll just typically use my kettle. So even if you're feeding kibble to your dog, just take kettle, your kettle water, purified water that's been warmed up in there and not boiled, obviously. That's a little too hot, but getting it nice and warm, and then pour it over the kibble. And even that can add that warm moisture. And then oily, typically in the Ayurvedic sense, we will recommend sesame oil, or really any oils for vata types, because they do again, with wind or the air and the space, with that windy disposition, they will have a tendency to get really dried out. So the mind will get dry and light. That's where the anxiety comes from. Where like insomnia will come from too. But the body will become dry and light, where they'll get gas and bloating, or their skin will become very dry, even their mouth or their ears will become dry. And so you're adding that hydration through water and that oleation through the oil, which is also just incredibly healing, really helps the body and the mind to work better, especially with our dogs when it comes to oil, which many of you might already know this, but just to reiterate, the oil is extracted from most dog foods because that would not allow for that food to be shelf stable. So our dogs are underhydrated and under oiled. and they need those healthy fats and they need that moisture. So adding all that back in, especially for an ungrounded dog, can put them right back down onto earth quite nicely.
That's interesting. It's probably why, people people that are anxious that eat to calm themselves down too, right? Like it's probably that whole grounding, like oily pizza.
Trying to, yes,
it's
trying to like comfort food, trying to like literally weigh yourself down.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But then the foods that aren't so healthy will have a different effect on the body. But if we can bring in the healthy, heavy foods, which there are those, we just don't think about them that way. But there are many healthy, heavy foods, which oils would be put into that category. That is key for those kinds of dogs, especially, or dogs in that kind of situation.
Yeah. I used to use ghee for a lot. For
a big favorite.
Cats just very well on it.
Perfect for Vata. This dosha that we're talking about, this ungrounded energy of these dogs we're referring to, ghee would be a great option instead of oil, or back, kind of exchange them out. But that would be great because a lot of dogs that are ungrounded won't eat consistently. So you can feed them the best, warmest, oily stuff on the planet, but if they're not going to eat it, or they're not going to eat it until it's cold, it's not really helping them. So that's where a little bit of ghee on the top, just a small amount, but there's such a strong aroma, and then all the health benefits, but it talks them into it pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, what you're saying about it being so, that visualization is so important, because I know when I used to show horses, I had a really incredible coach, and she used to say to me, I would just be so nervous, and then as soon as I got nervous, I would go right into my horse, right? My horse would just be like, oh boy, okay, here we go. So she would say to me, just when you're about to go out, just visualize the whole process, like visualize it in your head before you go. So it would be a similar, and my horse would calm right down, right? Because then my attention was like already seeing me do it, before I would go out. It's a similar thing. It's really, I'm sure it's so incredibly helpful for anxious dogs, because everybody gets anxious when their dogs get anxious, or their horse get anxious. It just, everybody's energy goes.
Yes, exactly. Even just breathing, even if we don't have time for an intentional meditation session, just taking a moment and placing your hand on your dog. I like to put my hand on the place between the shoulder blades. As they say, it's like animals, we have 7 chakras. They say animals have 8 chakras. Animals meaning specifically dogs and horses. So there's this additional 8th chakra that's called the brachial, and it's in between the shoulder blades. And that is, as it's said by people that have researched and studied the energy practices here, it's said that this is also the connection point to humans. So it's like the point of the human canine bond. So oftentimes I'll just put my hand there and just either sweep or just breathe. Just breathe and send the intention of, it's okay. Even say it out loud, like, it's okay, all is well, you are safe. You're whatever kind of reminder you want to give to this animal, but tell them that, even silently or out loud, and just place your hand there. And then that can really help you to be heard, that message that you have to share. But just one thing on the brachial chakra, think of, where do we put chemical flea prevention and tick prevention? We put it right there, on that very sensitive, receptive space in the body. So that's just yet another reason not to do that.
Vaccines are there as well.
Go right there. For the logical, like, oh, animals can't get to it, they can't lick it. But from the energetic perspective, that's really not good that we're doing that. So interesting thing.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. That's really, really good information, and practical, like really practical, like tangible things to do. That's great. you know, I always just add one more thing is about, you know, the gut and the microbiome and making sure, because a lot of rescue animals have really poor gut health, really poor gut health.
Plus,
So
they've been vaccinated recently. If they've been, and sometimes if they're in and out, they'll even vaccinate them a couple of times if they've been moved around.
at
So
least,
that can really beat down their health. They're just beat down in general, you know, energetically,
yeah,
soulfully, sometimes physically not in a good space. So yeah, the more you can like intend for like we're restoring, we're rebuilding, we are preserving, you know, all of that kind of intention going into it, even blessing their food. That's another one that sometimes we forget about. But right before you feed it to them, and you don't have to have a certain religious belief. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about the love, like the depth of love, even for a new animal or an animal you're temporarily taking care of. If you're on this call and you've been listening to all of this, you obviously have a very deep level of love and connection to canines and to animals. And so just bring your attention to that love and infuse it into the food. Infuse it into all the beings that brought the food, everything and everyone that was involved in that, and let it carry with it nourishment to heal this being on every level. And then you feed it. And that right there can, you know, can be felt and then consumed by your animal.
Yep. I remember, do you know who Gabriel Bernstein is?
Yes, I know her very well, and personally too.
Oh, you do? Oh, I love her.
Yeah.
And I remember watching a couple of years ago, I was taking this herbal supplement, like an herbal tincture, and it was brutal. It was a harsh one to take. But I remember watching her and going, like, she was taking some stuff and she was like making these faces and being like how horrible it was to take it. And she was like, you know, not pinching her nose, but almost. And her herbalist or her naturopath said to her, you like, how are you taking this? Like, cause she was complaining there or something. And she said, you have to put all the intention of healing and love and what's going into this before you drink it. Like you have to have that intention when you're taking it. And it's so true with everything that we're putting into our body or what we're speaking to another person, like our intention when we're talking to someone, right? What's our intention of our words? What's our intention? You know, what words are we saying? Are we paying attention to what we're saying? I think it's pretty vital for you know, we're more, you know, when you were saying about the science of nature and science and stuff, I'm a big fan of that. And the more we're learning, just like, you know, the documentary about water, right? How speaking to water and then freezing it and like
Dr. Emoto,
the Japanese one. Yeah, it was incredible. Like you can't, nobody can dispute that. There it is. You know, that's the intentions of even watching something that's really, you know, gory or dramatic or harsh or whatever, like what that does to us cellularly. So it's I think in our dogs and our animals are even extra sensitive to that. You know,
definitely.
that's how they. Okay, Steph, next.
We're gonna do one more. I've got one here from Sinette. She said she's got a 9-year-old shepherd. We lost his sister in December, and since then he's had digestive issues, hiccups, skin problems, in general low energy. I feel like I'm not helping him to be happy. What can I do for him? Who would like to start with this one?
Amanda, you go ahead, because people can always listen to me.
Well, thank you. My mind, I always, when I hear a question or when I'm meeting with a client or when I'm teaching anytime, I really try to open a channel. Now, I'm not saying that I am necessarily like an animal communicator or psychic or any of that. I don't claim to be any of those things, although I think we all are those things. But what I'm talking about is just opening ourselves up, right? Just like really, I feel as if I channel, and through me, the information can flow. It has an outlet to flow. So as I'm listening to your questions, I always do that. And the first thing that came to me when I heard about your dog was that I feel as if it's in grief still, and something subtle more than growth. So yes, there are food changes and things like that. You said, I think that there was some belly aches, right? And some response of the physical body. But I have a feeling, clearly I don't know your dog and I'm not very close to this, but the feeling is that the mental anguish is causing the physical troubles. And so one go-to that I love for grief are flower essences. I know Julie speak about them. I heard another session where you talk about them quite a bit, and I love them. Likely most of our audience knows what they are, but these are very different from essential oils. And there are specific formulations, and I even have my own little concoction that I formulate with various flowers that is specifically for grief. Flower essences are great for emotional wellness, emotional healing. And when it comes to our animals, we've really been talking about it quite a lot on this call, is there's only so many things we can do for their emotions. There's so much we can access physically, or we think we can, and then we feel as if emotionally we're limited. So we really aren't. Everything we've shared tonight are great tools that you have at your disposal right now, today. And flower essences are something that you can certainly get your hands on. And there's, like I said, I have a specific blend, but there are other ones out there that are pre-formulated. Black Winged Farms is a wonderful company that makes flower essences for animals. Black Winged Farms, they have one for grief. And so providing something like that, you'll literally spritz it into the air, and it's just putting like a frequency into the environment of the animal that helps alleviate the emotional heaviness. So that can be very helpful. And the last thing that I'll share, just to hand it over to Julie also, because I know she has lots of great stuff, is again, from that energy space, visualization, not to be repetitive, but sitting with your dog, maybe doing some meditation or some mindfulness, and imagining your other dog there, imagining their bond, helping and guiding them to stay connected. They especially don't need this physical body to be there with each other. They just get confused because the humans knock them off track and give them mixed signals sometimes. So be real clear with your signal and tell them you can connect with your sister. I think it was a female dog, right? You can connect with your friend still in the spiritual space, in this energetic space, in the space of love, and like do it and imagine them together. Imagine on your screen of your awareness, imagine them laying together, playing together, doing the things that they love to do together. And if you can kind of give them that opportunity to be together while alleviating some of the heaviness of the grief, you might be able to see a very different energy and a different animal within a couple of weeks, I would say.
Yeah, that's a really good, their ability to connect is super strong, but they do get confused with their humans, right? Because we are often so grief ridden, right? Especially in the beginning, and they get confused for sure. Animals do get confused. So I would agree, is like allowing them in visualization of them together, and leaving. It's been a while now, but I people think I'm insane, but anytime I ever lose an animal, I always let them hang around for a while, right? I don't immediately take them out of my house. I just leave them in my house for at least 24 hours and let everybody kind of hang out with them and see them and understand and do whatever they need to do to process it. Some of my animals don't want to be near them. They're like, okay, they're gone. They're still here, but they're good. And then some of them are wanting to be really close to them and stay close to them, but leaving their blankets around still, and been leaving their scents around still, things like that, not to just, you know, take their bowl away, get rid of their collars, take their blankets away. People get freaked out by that. And I'm very much no, like just leave it there as long as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then from a homeopathic point of view, stomach issues and grief, remedy wise, is interesting that it's coming up again, is agnasia and napmir, are two really big physical ailments from emotional grief. So, you know, agnasia is if the animal or the person is presenting symptoms of grief, like, you know, looking super depressed or seeming anxious, that would be more agnasia. But if they're acting normal or acting like everything's fine or wanting to be away more and getting burpy and gut stuff, napmir is a really good remedy. And you want to go a higher potency, like 200 C, not 30, because that's on the more of the emotional realm. And they're two easy remedies to get. The agnasia can also be called amara. So most health food stores carry it, and you just need to give it to them 3 times, like 2 pills every 8 to 12 hours for 3 doses. But you need to. Am I all blurry? I look all blurry. Am I blurry?
Okay.
I'm okay.
You're right.
So you could do it every 8 to 12 hours for 3 doses. But go online, look at agnasia and look at napmir, and read it, and see which one represents your dog and what they're doing. But
Amazing. No, that's super helpful. Thank you. I have 2 more things here quickly to read. Rebecca said, since COVID-19, I've found Jay Shetty live meditation, and I've been doing it over and over, and my 13-year-old Jack Russell seems to be happier since I've become calmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure he is, or she is.
Yeah.
I'm sure of it. Yeah, Jay Shetty's great. And bringing some sort of practice in like that, like you can just see, like in your dog, most people will report, they just feel like their dog is so much more at rest and in acceptance and non-reactive, or not as nearly as overreactive as they once were. That can be what you notice right away with meditation. So I'm so glad that you guys found that. I have a little Jack Russell mix, so I know they're real in tune to their human companions, that's for sure. So just picking up off your vibe.
Yeah. Sandra's also asking, Julie and Amanda, do you offer phone consultations regarding specific questions for my dog's well-being? Thank you.
Yes, I do offer them. You can find them. Well, they were on our website. You might just want to actually email me. You can email connect@samadog.com, and I will send you a link to book a 20-minute free consultation. So I offer those when there's just some questions initially and some kind of conversation to have. So I'm happy to do that with you. I would love to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I used to, but I don't anymore. I have a rescue farm with 40 animals. And with work, it's like I just don't have, I don't feel like I used to spend so much time with each individual patient that I just don't feel like I can. So what I do though now is I will do second and third opinion for vets. So I'll work with a vet, because then that I feel more comfortable letting the vet know what to do, because then the vet can be the eyes for me. So that if I feel like I don't have the time, then I'll work with the person's vet or the animal's vet.
Awesome, ladies. Thank you so much for being on here with us tonight. If we didn't get to your question, our apologies. You can email us, questions@adoredbeast.com, and we will absolutely give you a hand, answer your questions. And don't forget, connect@samadog.com if you want to get in touch with Amanda. Thanks for joining us tonight, Amanda. Thank you, Julie.
We have to have you back on. I could sit and talk to you for hours.
Oh, I know. I would love that too. When we could dive into different topics too, you know, we can take on certain circumstances or struggles that people might be having, but that would be awesome. And thank you both for your all of the work that you put out into the world for decades now. And I really have to recognize your level of professionalism. It was very clear and obvious since our first communication, and it's wonderful to have that, you know, so not only is your information so good, but your whole system is so well held and therefore will travel far around this world. And it's really an honor to be part of it tonight.
Well, thank you. I just, we have so many incredible people out there that are doing such amazing things. And I just feel like not everybody knows, and not everybody, like, we just have to all, I don't know, work together as a big, massive community to support one another and filter through as much of this intense energy that's happening right now. Cause I feel like together we can do it. Like, I really do.
Yeah.
I feel like we can
Yeah.
really come out
With
of
our
this.
animals, with our animals by our sides, absolutely. We're so much stronger with them.
Are we ever? Like, way stronger. Well,
Super.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you're very welcome. Many blessings to all of you, and we will talk soon. Please stay in touch.
Thank you, ladies, for this such a powerful session. We'll see everyone next week. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.